what are the next steps as the most important things? Let me just turn it over. We just spent the last 20 minutes talking.
Okay.
You get the opportunity.
Sure.
Where do we take all of this from your perspective? Where does this go? How do we maximize the value of what we've done and maintain it?
You know, one of the things that comes up time and time again, pardon my voice, is that everyone's involved.
Yeah.
That's important. I agree. But I think we can't stop short on that one. So everyone can't understand equally, care equally, and take action equally. So the difference between, do I have everybody's attention, and do they know what to do, or what I expect of them, is a big step that often lets get. The simple example I use in some talks is, anyone old enough to remember Smokey Bear? Of course you are, some of you are, right? Only you can prevent forest fires. Okay, well that's an attention getter, but what am I supposed to do? I get it, but what am I supposed to do? Well, any Boy Scouts here, former Boy Scouts? I think there was a 5-step process to extinguish a campfire safely: water, ashes, stick, disturb, So the difference between what sort of bringing attention and defining action is one that's easy to overlook. And I'll give you one example. So if you accept, you don't have to accept the premise that the CIS critical controls are the most important things you should do. That's the way we design them. You can agree or not. So we did a study a few years ago about if they're the most important things to do, then how do I translate that into every job in a company? And we assembled an expert panel, got all kinds of fancy heat maps and all that. But the idea is everyone from clerical to executive, we spelled out, right, what should be in job descriptions, what should be their responsibilities. That's a fair amount of work. We've never been able to recreate that study, by the way. We did it for the Air Force, I think. But that's kind of where I think we need to be more specific about what we ask people to do. So it's great to get their attention, but that's not enough to get action going. And then I'll just say one other thing. Bill's point on, I usually frame it as people have a natural, inherent need to be associated with something greater than themselves. And I think that's absolutely true. It has been in my experience. But you have to be clever about defining what that is, right? It has to be emotional, it has to fire off, the right part of your brain to help people see. Because if you don't get that right, then it comes across as we're pandering to you. We love you all of our employees. Of course, we don't pay you enough, or we don't participate in the bonus. So you have to match it with some sort of action. But I think that is right. What is that bigger goal? It takes some work to do that. Now, all right, last example. So I worked at NSA. 90% attack other nations for a living. They know what victory looks like. Absolutely. Me, 10% defense. What does victory look like? I see it on the poster. Nobody hacked you today. Nothing happened. That's a great day. That's a really different kind of victory. And if you want to excite people, it takes creative leadership to help them see what constitutes victory. The example I used, I'm playing on Bill's what would it take, which is a wonderful question. What I challenged my teams to do in the early 2000s was, so we produced the NSA security guides, we gave them away to the public.
Sorry, I can't do video like that.
Oh, I say. And people, our tech people, my teams, did what tech people always do. We told those folks what the right answer is. Why aren't they doing what we told them to do? We're smarter than the NIST guys, by the way, and the DISA guys and everybody else in the government. And I said, let's reframe the whole question. What would it take not to have the best technical answer? What would it take to improve the security of every desktop in the DoD? Literally millions. What would it take to improve the security of every desktop in the DoD? And the discussion I led them down was, why does a desktop look like it does in the DoD? It's not a technical question. Microsoft has a role, the integrators have a role, our purchasing, our policies. There's a whole stream of people. So if you want to make a difference, you have to organize all those people, right? It's kind of your point. It's people with different jobs to common purpose. And that was for us, that was a pretty clear example that I could galvanize not only across NSA, but with this witness and a number of other folks. So it takes some creative leadership to think through those things and pick the target that people can legitimately associate with and say.
Yeah.
So the victory is not how many bad guys did I kill, it's I'm going to change the way the Defense Department computes. Our work is going to be found in every desktop in the doggone DoD. That's pretty cool, and that appeals to some number of people as a really important goal.
It goes to
Thanks for
framing.
letting me rant, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. It goes to framing again.
As a tipping point, as
Yeah.
a generalized tipping point in organizations, because of of everybody's uniqueness and everybody's point of view, we're all a collection of our experiences and our interpretation of our experiences. 80% is generally seen as critical mass. If you can get 80% of your organization operating in an ideal way, you've got a high-performing organization.
That's fair.
Now, you always strive for 100, of course, but at 80, you're a high-functioning organization, generally speaking. Now, if you have only 2 people, probably you need 100%. But just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So, okay, that's great. How do we do it?
I think 2 things strike me again, from a neuroscience standpoint. Framing, how we frame an issue or a question, and the precise words we use to explain it. Both of those things impact our brains in very specific and very different ways. So if I think I'm using, a lot of people have a certain pride in using their own words to say what somebody else has said. Avoid that. If there's a neuroscience, I've had so many people tell me, yeah, I asked the what would it take question, but I have my own way of asking it, and it doesn't work. Of course it doesn't work. You didn't ask it. It has to be asked in a specific way because of the way our brains interpret. People come into a room and take notes on their laptop, or they come into the same room and take notes, pen and paper. The people who take notes on pen and paper have better retention of the information because of the way our brain reacts to various stimuli. It bothers me that cursive writing is no longer taught, because it means that we will lose an entire generation of people who absorb information and don't remember what the hell they heard. That's a problem. When you are taking notes, take them in longhand. You'll remember more.
Exactly.
You are excused.
Thank you, Father.
So framing and talking, and part of framing is not talking about risk. Now that sounds odd. Don't talk about risk. Talk about the impact on the organizational goals and achievements of an event. I did a little exercise with ChatGPT. I named mine Albert. It's the same ChatGPT you all use, but mine is called Albert. And I gave Albert this. I outlined 2 or 3 different companies. One was a boutique wealth management company. One was a medical diagnostic company. One, I don't remember the third, a distribution company. And I laid out a profile of the company. I said, I'm the owner and CEO. We've been growing modestly. I want to at least maintain that growth, and I'd like to accelerate our growth over the next 3 years. List the existential barriers and challenges that could impede our growth. Every single one of them, Albert said, a cyber attack. You can use that. Albert said it. You can use it. If it's top of mind in AI, why isn't it top of mind in the people who use AI? Bring that into the conversation. See what you get. Some will respond and some will say, bring it out. Think about how you want to frame every issue, and back to this whole idea of risk. I don't usually talk about risk. If I'm talking to a VP sales, I talk about their goals, and I bring up the subject of, well, so what happens if something occurs that prevents you from achieving your sales goal? It means, first of all, it means you're not going to get the bonus you want, but how many of your high commission salespeople are going to leave because you haven't hit your goals and their compensation is not what it needs to be? And when they leave and you rehire people, what's the training and development curve look like before they become productive enough to get you back on track? And what's that going to do to the revenue for the following year? I haven't mentioned the word risk. I talk about implications. Implications are more powerful than the word risk. If I'm talking to someone in distribution, I say, you know, what does it do to your customer satisfaction when your deliveries are consistently late and your lead times don't mean anything and you can't commit to a delivery date that your customers are going to be acceptable of? What does that do to sales? What does that do to bottom line? When I'm talking to people in accounting and finance, I talk about the implications of cash flow problems occasioned by people not paying on time because they haven't got their goods on time and they're delaying payment and they're holding it up as a weapon. And now your bank relationships are impacted. And you need more working capital, you need a greater working capital line, you need more collateral to do that, and you're paying higher interest. What does that do to your balance sheet? What does that do to your job security? I haven't said the word risk.
One of the topics that came up during one of the prior panels was around, I forget the term used, but I would call it peer benchmarking. The psychology of, I call it, no one wants to be the lonely antelope at the edge of the cyber herd, right, getting picked off. And so that's one reason part of the origin anecdotes that led to the formation of CIS was, I think it was NASA at the time, put in place a measurement system for all the Solaris machines. And there was a very large scale measurement of the configurations of their desktops and servers, and it was reported up. But they managed it originally as, it will not be shown to the department at large. You get 6 months. And then it became every staff meeting, it was reported, right? Sort of red, yellow, green, or 1 to end. Well, no one wanted to be anywhere at middle or below. So there was a lot of peer pressure, but it took some tooling, it took some management oversight. And we've seen a few examples like that, but I think that, again, it's a psychology of no one wants to be left and looking irresponsible in front of their peers. And that was a handy way that we thought about that back then. That's why, you mentioned, Sam, in our tools, we provide an anonymized, where are you in your sector, right?
Yeah.
In the industry that you're in. Are you, upper quartile or wherever? And it helps people, and people have used it to explain to their management that, look, we are the lonely antelope at the bottom here in the herd.
That's right. Well, and I think a piece of it as well is, and it goes back to something I remember 10 years ago after the breach of Sony, when Sony was coming out with that picture about North Korea, and North Korea came back and attacked Sony. And on George Stephanopoulos' Sunday show, he had Major General somebody, I don't remember his name, and Stephanopoulos says to him, so if a business comes to you, what advice do you give them? And he says, the most important thing is to take cybersecurity every bit as seriously as you take operations and finance. And that's one story. Second story is back in the 1980s, when we were having our lunch eaten by the Japanese quality movement, and American quality just was not up to it. Particularly Bob Galvin, who at that time was, I think, president, CEO, leader at Motorola, changed the Monday morning staff meeting to where instead of starting that meeting talking about how did finance do last week, what were sales and blah, 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 all we started with quality. Quality was the number one issue on the agenda every Monday morning at staff meeting. And sure enough, Motorola kicked butt in quality. They jumped to the top. You gotta, and now we go back to the neuroscience, neuro stuff as well. You gotta learn it. You gotta practice it. Yeah. All the reading that I do about, how to do a various stretch or whatever doesn't help my body one bit if I don't get down and do the stretch, right? And it doesn't help if I do it once and 3 weeks later, maybe I do it again. No, you gotta practice it. You gotta get good at it. You gotta build the habit of getting it. And so much of cybersecurity is, let's build the habit. What is it, Craig Newmark, one of the companies he's supporting, has a video out called Count to 9 or something like that. I forget the exact detail. That when you see that email come in, stop and count to 9 before you decide whether or not to click the link, open the attachment, whatever. Pay attention. Get good at it, practice it. And if you do that day in, day out on a regular basis, it grows into the culture. And now you've got what we're talking about, having the opportunity to manifest.
Yeah. And when we talk about cultures are not static.
Yeah.
So you train everybody, and everybody's trained. But oh, by the way, you have 15% employee turnover every year. You're only static one day. After that, you've got to change a continuously changing landscape. In the big four accounting firms, they plan on 20% annual turnover. They want it because they all have an up or out policy. You either make partner or you're gone. And they want to make room for all the fresh young blood coming in right out of school with a whole new body of knowledge and awareness and work ethic and energy and so on and so forth. So they want that churn. Well, if they're concerned at all about cybersecurity, they've got at a very minimum, they've got to train and retrain 20% of their entire employee population. So in a company like Deloitte or IBM, they have 350,000 employees. 20% is a big number. So to Jason's point earlier, ask yourself, what would it take for me to make a contribution that would be meaningful to me and to the people I touch directly? And then it will be the wave going out. At the same time, work from the bottom up. And just as a way of identifying it, cybersecurity on TikTok. And see what happens. I mean, get to use a ridiculous source that you've never considered before, but which a lot of people that would be important to you, working at the lower levels, jobs at the lower levels of your company, those sites would be influencers for those people. Work it from every single angle.
Yeah.
Cultural change takes a long time because neuroplasticity, the point Stan just made, neuroplasticity takes a long time. If you want to do a little experiment to see neuroplasticity in action, if you're right-handed, for the next 21 days, brush your teeth with your left hand. At first, keep a towel next to you because you're going to have wiping toothpaste from all over the place. But do it for 21 days in a row. After 21 days, you will be ambidextrous.
Yeah, I can attest to that because Bill gave me that challenge like 6-9 months ago, and I tried it. And absolutely, when I'm right-handed, and it's an electric toothbrush, of course, so it's like all over the place. And I can't even, you can't even get it in your mouth successfully. It's on your cheek and all over. But after about 5 or 6 days, you begin to just, okay, I got this sort of under control, and then, after a couple of weeks, it's like automatic. And then after, you're right, after 21 days, it's, how could I have ever done it any other way? But that's this process.
Bill, I wanted to go back to your point about you don't talk about risk to decision makers, right? I think there's something to that. So in the world I grew up in, hard-charging military folks, and the polite term is project force. And what they want to know, the driving imperatives, can I confidently project force? Kill people, do bad things, all that kind of stuff. And the technical answer has traditionally been, well, we think we've buttoned things down and we put all our patches in place, and the commander is listening to like, what? Can I project force? What confidence do I have? And I think it's a clear case, and a lot of cybersecurity is like that, where perfection is the enemy of the good.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as technical people, we want to have an algorithmic or a really high confidence answer to a really fuzzy, foggy question. And the anecdote I tell, my dad was an Army supply sergeant. And he tells me one day, he says, well, when I go into work tomorrow, I got to load up a deuce and a half, which is the big truck, right, full of supplies that I have that are not on the books. And when the inspector comes, I send them for a drive on the range so the inspector doesn't see them. Because if I don't have those, I can't trade them with the other supply sergeants for the stuff that they're missing. So the point was, the commander would ask the question, are we ready to go to war, for example?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out 100% of the planes aren't ready. Not everybody is fueled up, equally trained. Not everything is in place. But we have enough experience and decision intuition to say, I'm not expecting 100%. But I need a level of confidence. And it seems like we haven't figured that out yet. Well, that on the technical side, we fight it because we want to be right, or at least we don't want to be wrong. And on the executive side, we don't understand. We haven't figured out what the model is. Does that make sense to you?
I don't know if there's a correlation, but when I guest lectured at USC for about 12 years in leadership in counterterrorism in a master's degree program class in a school of public policy. A lot of law enforcement and military. So we talked about counterterrorism, both pre-event and post-event. Post-event was way sexier and had much more enthusiasm attached to it than prevention. Mm-hmm. It's more tangible. It's more macho. Yeah, people get killed, but that's collateral damage. And it just was an interesting dynamic. And I think that, I wonder if that same dynamic holds true in cybersecurity. People will pay more attention and pour more resources, into robust response than extensive prevention.
Well, I think the market of tools reflects that. Mm-hmm. It's much more exciting to spot the malware, clean up or recover, and the software needed to manage configurations. That's kind of grunt work, right? That's just IT stuff.
Right.
But the basis of security has always been good IT management. And if you can't do that, then you're pretty much helpless.
Yeah. It's a yes, and to your point, I certainly grew up in a world where the heroes on television were the Lone Ranger who rode in after the problem started and saved the town. The Green Beret, Batman and Robin, Superman, all of them were after the disaster, after the bad guys hit.
Here's the thing one of my guys came up with. Firefighters are heroes, sprinkler installers are zeros. And that's absolutely true, right? No glory in installing
So,
sprinklers.
back then to your point on the military, not the projecting the force side, but what I've had discussions recently with some people in national security around shaping the battlefield, which is a whole different phenomenon that dropping leaflets from an airplane, we're coming after you, or move aside, or whatever. Shaping the battlefield, clearing out, you build a citadel in Nova Scotia. You can go there and you can see this, and it's on a hill. And around the hill, all the trees have been cut down. And this goes back several hundred years when the citadel was being built. But, they'd shape the battlefield. The enemy's coming. We want to make sure we can see them. I think part of what we have to do is shape the cultural battlefield where the heroes are not the Supermans who come in after the event. They're the sprinkler installers. Those are the heroes. Those are the heroes, not the people who come in after the event. I think that's another part of what we've got to do here. And that's cultural. That's across the whole community. It's not just inside this company or that company.
So I think that, part of the test of whether this, to the extent this day was a success, is the kind of questions you walk away with, not answers. If you walk away from here asking the right questions, this was a good day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you come away saying, I learned so much, none of which I will use, not so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also relevant in that context to point out this day is not just a day, but it's part of a whole program that Secure the Village has put together. That on the one side is our Southern California Cybersecure program, where small businesses, MSPs, can sign up and be part of a cohort of associated small businesses or MSPs working together to improve their own security. It's not come to a lecture and we'll tell you what to do. No, we're going to sit down. We got a playbook. We're going to go over the playbook. You're going to fill it out so it makes sense for you. A lot of the beginning part of that playbook is what Leslie was talking about from the Cyber Readiness Institute. But then it goes on to the NIST framework, or if it's an MSP, to CIS's framework, so that people know what to do. And then there's this ongoing discussion, and that's our Cyber Guardian Pro program. We're all, to Jason's point, we're all Cyber Guardians here, that keep this dialogue going. We're going to start in probably March. I don't think we can get this started in February. It's too close already to starting, but we'll start this in once a month. Just get together and continue educating ourselves on the one side, as this field is just so large and there's so much we can all learn that from each other even, but then also keep the discussion around what would it take? So we have this what would it take discussion, not as just an event here, but an ongoing. And as we learn more, as our imaginations open up, as you say, because it does, I know that from my own experience, we move this puppy forward. We move this, we're not going to secure the world today, but let's get some momentum behind what we're doing here.
Stan, I was involved in probably all the large-scale public-private sharing things, during my time in government especially. And there was kind of a common wisdom within government. If the government doesn't provide a legal framework and liability and so forth, people will never share. Mm-hmm. That is not my experience at all.
Yeah.
There were many regional, geography-based, sector-based things that just popped up. Yeah. And people came to agreement on what's shareable and the sort of rules of behavior, right? The information that goes outside. There are formal systems like the ISAC, we're the Multi-State Information Sharing Analysis Center. But my experience was, if you have the right model, right, people see either common danger or common opportunity, and it turned out in some areas, probably around here too, many people have worked for many of the companies, or for multiple companies, so there's a strong bond of personal friendship that allows those things to pop up. So if you get that right, my experience has been they're incredibly powerful. People will, they're not waiting. Now, sharing with the federal government is a different question, but I had never seen, the kind of self-imposed barriers that would prevent a group like this becoming a centerpiece of discussion over time. You've done this for years, so you've built your community.
One thing you can do is individually write down somewhere between 1 and 3 of your own what would it take questions that will serve you in real life, in real terms, at whatever level you choose. You have a blank slate. Ask 3 what would it take questions. And the one that resonates most, start using it with whoever you interact with, whether they're employees or peers or clients or whatever, whoever the audience may be. See what happens. And write about it. Tell us about it. Share your experience. What did work and what did not work. My experience with the question is the times it doesn't work are the times it wasn't framed in the right context. Good intention, not great execution. We can fix that. I hate to do this, but I just wrote a book. It's coming out March 18th. It's called What's Next? Stan alluded to it. How to make your next chapter your best chapter. And it's designed for anybody who is about to enter a new chapter of their life where their future will not be anything like their past. And it helps people create a foundation for navigating that future based on 6 elements. The platform that you'll use, which is based on vision, values, and greater purpose, and the skills you'll learn to explore and develop that platform, reflection, adaptability, and what would it take. So it's destined to sell about 40 million copies, I think, but maybe not. I don't know, something between 10 and 40 million. And it's an interesting journey so far. I'm developing a social media marketing team composed of people who know nothing about book publishing and a hell of a lot about how to gain followers, and possibly a social media marketing strategy company headquartered in Australia. It came up in the story I told about Pete's Coffee Shop, and I was so distracted by Tony's message that I failed to mention it. But they asked about, the woman asked me, so what do you do? And I told her about the book, and her response was, wow, my husband and I have already been having conversations much like what you talk about in your book. I want your book. Where can I buy it? I said, it's not out yet. When it comes out, you'll buy it. You can buy it on Amazon. It comes out March 18th. She said, give me your contact information. I want to have that book. So if my intention in going to Pete's was to meet people who might be interested in the book, this was obviously a win. It wasn't, but it happened anyway, and it happened spontaneously. And that's really the key, that you are always in a position to uncover opportunities that were not necessarily on your agenda when you entered whatever space you're entering. If you think metaphorically, keep your mind open, and let conversations flow, amazing things will bubble up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'll piggyback on your story. I'm in Whole Foods several months ago wearing a T-shirt that's full of mathematical symbols. And somebody in the produce department, stops me and says, I love your T-shirt, whatever. And so we start talking. And within 10 minutes, he comes to understand that, you know, he doesn't want to be a produce clerk all of his life. He wants to do something else. That there's a whole career opportunity in cybersecurity that he could find himself moving into. That's the kind of thing that becomes possible when it's just be who you are. Be Tony, be Bill, be Stan, you know. David, you don't be David.
Too hard to be
everybody
everybody
else it works for, but not you. But, you know, just be yourself and keep the discussion going. And a key piece of your book, I'm in his book, by the way. I'm one of the, I'm an example that he uses.
The before or after example.
It's don't even bother.
This book isn't for everyone.
That's right. But to your point about reflection is so fundamental. To where it's as a kind of mystical place in the mathematics of infinity, even if you want to go down that path. But just to reflect on, how's it going? How's it working? Am I being successful? Am I getting my points across? Am I not? As opposed to just going through your day doing what your day is all about. But reflect on it, think about it. Bring that back into that reflection back into the conversation as well. Becomes such an important piece of it.
Any more input from you guys?
Or are we keeping you from the alcohol?
Both might be true.
Yeah.
Well, Stan, as we wrap up, thanks again for the chance to be part of this.
Oh,
for your partnership, for your friendship.
Thank you as well.
Much more to come, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Looking forward
for
to it.
sure. Thank all of you.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how grateful I am to everybody that's here, that we're together in this. And, you know, this is to infinities and beyond, you know, if you will. This is that kind of moment, that kind of challenge that we face, because it's not going to, we're going to find the silver bullet and solve it. Mm-hmm. No, this is part of who we are and who we must become as well as we secure our communities. So thank you all for being a part of this.
And before we say goodbye to everybody, we had just as many people joining us virtually from across the U.S. Because they are interested in the same topic. So, and thanks J.C. Vega. He says, I love shaping the battlefield of the environment for successful security culture and outcomes. So that was a great point. So thanks for everyone who joined us online. And everything was recorded. All you saw the TV. So thanks, guys.
Super. Thanks.